Welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah, really glad to be here for this one.
If you are joining us today, it means you are looking for the signal hidden beneath the noise. You want to know what is actually happening behind the curtain of global events.
Right. Way beyond the standard headlines.
Exactly. Well, today we have something incredibly special for you. We are unpacking a highly sensitive, data-dense institutional intelligence memo.
It's massive.
It really is. It's an open source intelligence flow tracker, or what the insiders refer to as a triangulated reality dossier.
That is exactly right. And I just want to emphasize, this isn't your standard morning news briefing.
No, definitely not.
Or a regurgitation of yesterday's press releases. What we are looking at today is a massive synthesis. It is a combination of intercepted corporate chatter.
Satellite imagery analysis.
Yeah, satellite imagery, dark pool whispers, and deeply vetted open source intelligence networks.
It's intense.
It is. It is all about finding the second-order and third-order effects that the broader market, well, they simply haven't priced them in yet.
Our mission today, as your guides, is to cut through all that noise of the mainstream narratives. We are going to connect the dots across consumer behavior, geopolitics, high-tech,
Even frontier science.
right, frontier science, to find the hidden signals that are actively shaping our world. The sheer scale of what is uncovered in this dossier is staggering.
It really connects things you would never think belong together.
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with a massive and frankly counterintuitive reversal in how we buy things.
Oh, the retail data. This is fascinating.
Right, because for the last decade, we have been fed this singular, unrelenting narrative. The physical world of retail is dead, and the digital world has permanently won.
That's the dogma.
We have all heard it. The shopping mall is a relic of the 1980s. Brick and mortar is a stranded asset. And everything, I mean, absolutely everything, is moving to e-commerce.
It has been the prevailing dogma of the entire investment community for years now.
But the dossier says otherwise.
It does. The triangulated reality in this data shows something completely different. It reveals a fascinating behavioral inversion, and it is specifically driven by Gen Z.
Which is wild because they are the first truly 100% digitally native generation.
Exactly. They don't know a world before the smartphone. And yet the data shows they are actively resurrecting the physical shopping mall.
They're spending money there.
A significantly greater proportion of their discretionary income in physical stores than millennials or Gen X ever did at this age.
Hold on, let me push back on that right away.
Quick pick.
Because when I drive past certain malls in Middle America, they look like dying hulks of concrete.
Sure, the zombie malls.
Yeah, they're completely abandoned. Maybe there's a lone department store anchoring a sea of empty parking spaces. How does that square with Gen Z resurrecting the mall? Are we sure they aren't just buying fast fashion on TikTok?
That is a crucial distinction, and it gets right to the heart of the data. You were talking about Class B and Class C malls. Those sprawling, undercapitalized regional centers built in the 70s and 80s, those are indeed dying. But the dossier specifically isolates Class A mall real estate investment trusts.
Class A.
Yes. Think of companies like Simon Property Group, ticker symbol SPG. These are high-end, highly curated, experiential destinations.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And if you looked at the psychology of a generation that grew up entirely mediated by screens, it starts to make perfect sense. For Gen Z, clicking a button on a glass screen and waiting for a brown cardboard box to arrive on their porch, well, it isn't a novelty.
It's just Tuesday.
Right. It's their baseline reality. It's mundane. In-person shopping, on the other hand, is a novel, tactile, and highly social experience.
It's an event.
Exactly. It provides a specific type of instant gratification that a digital transaction simply cannot replicate. You try the garment on, you feel the fabric,
You walk out with the bag in your hand.
and crucially, you do it as a social event with your peers.
It's the physical experience repositioned as a premium product. It is almost like vinyl records making a comeback because Spotify is too frictionless.
That is a brilliant comparison.
And the intel notes that formerly online-only, digitally native brands are reading these exact same tea leaves. Brands like Edicted, which blew up on social media.
Or revitalize legacy brands like PacSun.
Yeah, they're actively opening physical storefronts in these Class A malls. They are seeing where the actual foot traffic is going, and they are following their digital customers right back into the physical world.
Some mall operators are even deliberately redesigning their atrium spaces to be more photogenic.
Wait, really?
Oh yeah. optimizing the physical architecture for digital amplification. So you go to the mall, take a great photo, post it online, and drive more people to the physical space.
That is wild.
And this is where the alpha, the actionable insight, really crystallizes for anyone watching the markets. This isn't just teenagers loitering in a food court. This is a structural, long-term shift in consumer behavior. The consensus view on Wall Street has treated all physical retail real estate as a melting ice cube in secular decline.
But the data shows these Class A operators are curating the exact high-friction, high-reward experiences that digital natives actually crave.
Exactly. And conversely, this exposes massive hidden cracks in over-levered, pure-play online retailers who completely lack a physical footprint.
Because they can't compete with the physical experience.
And their costs are rising. When customer acquisition costs online skyrocket due to privacy changes in mobile operating systems, the physical store suddenly becomes your most efficient billboard and customer acquisition tool.
The Dossier even flags persistent clustered insiders selling at major e-commerce platforms like Shopify over the last few quarters.
Which tells you a lot.
It suggests that the people sitting at the very top of the digital food chain might secretly lack faith in their own digital-only dogma. They see the physical reversion happening.
They absolutely do.
And speaking of e-commerce, that seamlessly brings us to the second massive shift in retail logistics, the death of fast and free shipping.
This is huge.
This directly challenges the Amazon Prime effect that has conditioned all of us to expect immediate delivery for over a decade.
It is a profound unraveling of a logistical miracle that we all took for granted.
We have all gotten completely hooked on the dopamine hit of clicking by and getting our packages in 2 days, or even the next morning.
But retailers are quietly taking that privilege away.
And here's the shocking part. We, as consumers, are happily letting them. The Dossier points out that Amazon is now routinely offering 7% discounts or digital content credits to customers if they simply select a later arrival date.
Just to wait a few extra days.
Yeah. Gap is offering what they call a no-rush shipping option that can take up to 9 business days.
9 days.
9 days. There is even a niche company highlighted in the intel, Birdie Ball Golf. They sell indoor putting mats.
Right.
They introduced an economy shipping option taking up to 2 full weeks.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the macroeconomic picture, we have to look at the massive underlying carrier cost pressures that are forcing this behavioral engineering.
Because shipping isn't actually free.
Exactly. We aren't just talking about inflation. We are talking about structural changes in how logistics are priced. Carriers like FedEx and UPS have been aggressively hiking their base rates by roughly 4.9% to 6.9% annually.
Compounding
Since 2020. But the base rate is just the tip of the iceberg.
What's the rest of it?
The real killers are the surcharges. You have fuel surcharges, address correction fees, residential delivery fees.
A nickel and dime everything.
And the most brutal of all is dimensional weight surcharges. That is where carriers penalize retailers for the physical space a box takes up on a truck, regardless of how light the item inside is.
So shipping a pillow costs a fortune.
Exactly. The profit margins for retailers who were subsidizing this ultra-fast speed have completely evaporated.
Right, because the era of zero interest rate policy, where venture capital would essentially subsidize your shipping just to acquire you as a customer and show top-line growth, that is definitively over.
Money costs money again.
But what is truly amazing is how the consumer is reacting to this new reality. The survey data in the Dossier shows that consumers now overwhelmingly rank cost savings over delivery speed.
It's a total flip.
More than 95% of people surveyed state they prefer free standard delivery, which takes 4 to 7 days over paying any kind of premium for expedited delivery.
And this is where the intelligence gets really deep. The Dossier highlights 2 massive, entirely unexpected ripple effects from the shift away from speed.
Let's hear them.
First, slower shipping is actually attracting higher intent buyers and drastically reducing return rates.
Wait, I need you to explain the mechanics of that. How does waiting longer for a box make you a better, more profitable customer for the retailer?
It comes down to the neurology of impulse buying. Think about it. If you are lying in bed at 11 p.m., scrolling your phone.
Which we all do.
Right. And you can click a button to have a pair of shoes arrive the very next morning. The friction of that transaction is absolute zero. You haven't had to invest any time or energy.
And you certainly haven't had time to think about whether you actually need or want the shoes.
Exactly. When it arrives the next day, the dopamine of the purchase has already faded, buyer's remorse sets in, and you print a return label.
So true.
But if you are forced to wait 9 days for something to arise, The pure impulse buyers drop out of the checkout funnel entirely.
The friction of the wait acts as a filter.
Precisely. The people who proceed to checkout are the ones who genuinely want the product. The Dossier cites a specific example. Cassiani, a high-end fur coat retailer. They saw their return rates drop by 20 to 30% simply by lengthening their stated delivery times.
That is absolutely brilliant when you think about it. You naturally filter out the flighty impulse buyers, and in doing so, you save an absolute fortune on reverse logistics.
Reverse logistics is a nightmare. Processing returns, restocking, dealing with damaged goods, it kills margins.
But you mentioned a second ripple effect, and this one really caught my eye.
Yes, the second effect is an existential threat to the entire buy now, pay later industry, the BNPL sector, companies like Affirm.
Now hold on, let me play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Why would delayed shipping kill a company like Affirm? If I am buying a $2,000 piece of furniture or a very expensive winter coat, aren't I using buy now, pay later because of the sheer price tag? Doesn't the high cost necessitate the loan, regardless of whether the item arrives tomorrow or next week? Why does a 9-day shipping delay suddenly make me financially conservative?
It is a great question, but it misunderstands the core behavioral driver of the BNPL business model.
How so?
While big-ticket items do use financing, the explosive growth of the industry was built on greasing the wheels of mid-tier impulse purchases.
Oh, like a $300 cart?
Exactly. The entire premise is about removing the financial friction of the immediate moment. It is designed to convert a maybe into a yes by breaking a $300 cart into 4 painless payments of $75. Right.
But here is the psychological catch. Taking on debt, even micro debt, requires a payoff. It requires the immediate rush of receiving the item.
Ah, I see where you're going.
If the consumer is demonstrating newfound patience, if you are willing to consciously wait 2 weeks for a package just to avoid a $10 shipping fee, your impulse to take on a high-interest credit agreement for that exact same purchase essentially vanishes.
Because the delayed gratification of the shipping timeline fundamentally short-circuits the immediate gratification required to justify the credit impulse?
Exactly.
That is a staggering behavioral insight. The patience required for the logistics actively cures the financial impatience of the consumer.
It really does.
I really want you, the listener, to pause and reflect on your own recent online shopping carts. Think about the last few times you checked out on Amazon or another retailer. Have you actively traded speed for savings?
Have you clicked that no rush button to get a small digital credit or save a few bucks? Because millions of people are making that exact same micro decision every single day. And it is quietly reshaping global logistics and threatening multi-billion-dollar credit models.
It is a massive behavioral reversion to the mean. We are transitioning from an artificial era of subsidized, frictionless instant gratification back to an era of calculated, localized value.
It is fascinating how entrenched physical networks and realities are fighting back against the digital-first models, and that perfectly tees up what is happening right now in our second major area of focus.
The auto industry.
Yes, the traditional auto industry is currently fighting a literal existential civil war, and it is happening right in our local communities.
It truly is a battle for the survival of the century-old franchise dealer model, and the stakes are the future of how every single car will be sold in America over the next 50 years.
To understand the sheer scale of this, I want to tell you the story of a guy named Fred Ippolito. Fred is a Volkswagen dealer based in West Islip, New York.
He's been around a while.
He's been in the game a long time. Now, a few years ago, when VW announced they were reviving the classic, beloved Scout brand.
Right, reimagining it as a rugged, all-American electric and hybrid vehicle line to compete with the Ford Bronco and Jeep.
Fred was thrilled. Dealerships had been begging VW for a rugged SUV for years. Fred was so confident in this that he actually went out and bought a vacant retail lot right next to his existing dealership.
Spent a lot of money.
Significant capital. Just to prep it to become a dedicated, state-of-the-art Scout showroom.
But there was a twist.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
A very painful strategic twist for Fred and the other roughly 600 VW dealers in the U.S. network.
Scout Motors, which is entirely backed by Volkswagen, came out and announced they were going to bypass the legacy dealer network completely.
Cut them right out.
They plan to sell directly to consumers, replicating the exact model pioneered by Tesla and later adopted by companies like Rivian and Lucid.
So what happened to Fred's lot?
Fred's vacant lot is still sitting there vacant 4 years later, and now he and state dealership associations are filing massive class action lawsuits against the very manufacturer they represent.
This is an incredibly complex legal and strategic battle. You have to look at the arguments from both sides to understand the broader market implications.
Let's break down those arguments.
So, the CEO of Scout, Scott Keogh, and it is worth noting, he used to be the CEO of Volkswagen of America.
So he knows the legacy system intimately.
He knows it inside and out. He is arguing that the current franchise system is fundamentally broken and inefficient.
And he has data to back that up, right?
He points to overwhelming consumer survey data, showing that buyers largely despise the traditional car buying experience. The endless haggling, the hidden document fees.
High-pressure hours spent trapped in the finance and insurance office. We all hate that.
Scout's argument is that the modern consumer demands price transparency. They want to order a car on their phone for a set price and have it delivered.
Simple. Frictionless.
By going direct, Scout can control the customer data, enforce uniform pricing, and significantly improve their own profit margins by cutting out the middleman.
But the dealers are fighting back with everything they have. And their arguments aren't just about protecting their own profits.
They argue that state franchise laws, which have been on the books for decades, explicitly protect them from manufacturers competing against their own franchisees.
But beyond the legal argument, they argue that local dealerships actually protect the consumer. How does that work?
Yes, the dealer argument is that local intra-brand competition, having 3 VW dealers within a 50-mile radius, that is what actually drives prices down for the consumer.
Okay, I can see that. They have to compete with each other.
Furthermore, they point out a massive logistical flaw in the direct-to-consumer model: service infrastructure.
Because cars break.
Selling a car is one thing. Maintaining it for 10 years is another. Dealerships argue that manufacturers simply are not equipped to handle local warranty work, complex repairs, and long-term customer relationships.
They point to Tesla for this, don't they?
They claim the Tesla service model, which often involves long wait times in remote service centers, proves that a localized physical network is absolutely necessary.
And this isn't just a spat between one brand and its dealers. The market implications here are profound.
Massive.
If Volkswagen and Scout actually win this lawsuit and successfully launch a direct-to-consumer brand, it provides a massive, legally vetted blueprint for every legacy automaker.
Ford, General Motors, Toyota, they're all watching this incredibly closely.
They could all theoretically launch new EV sub-brands with direct-to-consumer models, vastly expanding their OEM margins while slowly starving their traditional dealership groups of future product.
But as the intelligence dossier keenly points out, Wall Street perpetually underestimates the political and legal moat of the auto dealership lobby.
It is powerful.
This isn't just an economic dispute. It is deeply political. Dealerships are massive local employers. They sponsor the Little League teams.
And crucially, they are incredibly significant political donors at the state and local legislative levels.
Politicians listen to auto dealers. If the dealers win this fight, if they successfully use state laws to block Scout's direct sales, it permanently secures the economic moat for massive, publicly traded dealership groups like AutoNation, ticker symbol AN.
It is a binary outcome that will redefine the economics of a trillion-dollar industry.
Absolutely.
It is the ultimate structural tension. You have the theoretical efficiency of digital centralization going head-to-head with the deeply entrenched, localized political power of physical networks.
It's friction versus frictionless again.
Speaking of entrenched physical networks and the flow of power, we need to transition to our third major topic. We have to talk about geopolitical tremors and the hidden corporate exposures that the broader market is currently ignoring.
This section of the dossier is very heavy.
It is. Now, before we dive into this specific section, I need to make something explicitly clear to you, the listener. The deep dive we are conducting today is reporting strictly on the geopolitical developments, capital flows, and market data exactly as they appear in the Institutional Intelligence Dossier.
Very important point.
We are not taking any political sides whatsoever, nor are we endorsing any foreign policy views, actions, or administrations. Our purpose here is to impartially analyze the economic realities and structural shifts presented in the source material.
That context is absolutely vital. As intelligence analysts, our goal is never to moralize or take a stance. It is solely to track the objective flow of capital and identify the shifting of systemic risk in the global system.
Exactly. So with that framework in mind, let's look at the global crude oil market.
The numbers are alarming.
The dossier highlights a staggering 36% skyrocketing of U.S. crude futures. briefly crossing the $90 a barrel threshold.
And we know what's driving that.
This surge is being driven by severe escalating conflict in the Middle East, specifically the U.S. and Iran proxy conflicts, and the direct kinetic disruptions happening in and around the Strait of Hormuz.
We are already seeing the immediate painful impact on everyday logistics and consumer prices.
Like diesel prices jumping 51 cents a gallon almost overnight in response to the supply chain panic.
Now, contrast that reality with the official mainstream narrative. The narrative, often projected by government energy secretaries and official spokespeople, tends to be one of profound calm.
Right, they're always trying to calm the markets.
They consistently cite record-high U.S. domestic oil production, and they repeatedly claim the global market is well supplied.
They attempt to dismiss the disruptions as temporary blips that won't affect long-term structural pricing.
But the triangulated reality in this dossier counters that complacency incredibly heavily.
The dossier warns that this official narrative is not just overly optimistic, it is dangerously myopic.
The real danger highlighted by the intelligence isn't just the spot price of oil hitting $90 today.
It is the duration of the conflict.
Yes. And more importantly, it is the massive, hidden corporate exposures that are absolutely not being priced into the current stock market valuations of seemingly unrelated companies.
What's fascinating here is how the intelligence tracks these non-obvious risks. When we talk about Middle East conflict, retail investors immediately look at defense contractors or oil majors.
That's the surface-level trade.
But the dossier looks deeper. It tracks the trillions of dollars of U.S. corporate investment deeply entangled in the Gulf region's infrastructure and entertainment sectors.
And the dossier specifically introduces a concept it calls the Dolan discount.
Let's unpack that, because it is a perfect, tangible example of hidden risk.
Okay.
James Dolan is a high-profile billionaire who controls a maze of entertainment and real estate companies, most notably Madison Square Garden Sports and Sphere Entertainment, tickers MSGS and SPHR.
Sphere in Vegas.
Exactly. The recent growth narrative, the entire bull case for these companies, has become deeply entangled with major international expansion deals.
Specifically, they have announced massive funding and partnerships in Abu Dhabi
to build a new multi-billion-dollar Sphere venue there, replicating the success of Vegas.
But the dossier points out a brutal reality.
If a wider regional conflict erupts, if the proxy wars escalate into direct state-on-state conflict, those massive regional partnerships transform from assets into crushing liabilities overnight.
Right. If the region becomes a kinetic war zone, or even just a severely destabilized high-risk environment, nobody is breaking ground on a multi-billion-dollar, highly visible entertainment sphere.
Supply chains halt. Insurance premiums skyrocket to unpayable levels, and the capital freezes.
The broader market is entirely missing this exposure. They are pricing these companies based on domestic success, completely ignoring the geopolitical sword hanging over their international growth models.
The dossier suggests that this Dolan discount is about to get much, much deeper as geopolitical risk slowly eclipses any positive domestic business news.
And we are already seeing the psychological impact of this conflict altering the status of entire sovereign entities.
Take Dubai, for example.
For decades, Dubai has meticulously, expensively crafted a reputation as the stable safe haven of the Middle East.
It was positioned as the Switzerland of the Gulf, a place where global capital, high-end tourism, and luxury real estate could thrive, totally immune from the volatility of its neighbors.
But that myth is shattering.
The intelligence notes that missile and drone interceptions, even when the defense systems boast a 93% success rate.
That 7% is terrifying.
It is fundamentally terrifying to expatriates and foreign investors. Direct hits on civilian infrastructure, however rare they might be, completely destroy that carefully curated safe haven status.
The dossier indicates that the high-end property market is beginning to halt. Forward-looking tourism bookings are threatened.
And we are seeing the very real beginnings of significant capital flight out of the region.
So the critical question for an intelligence analyst or an investor is always, where does that fleeing capital go?
Money doesn't just disappear into the ether, it relocates.
It seeks out stable, non-OPEC jurisdictions that offer similar returns without the kinetic risk. And the dossier points to a massive, coordinated geopolitical pivot happening simultaneously in the Western Hemisphere to capture this capital flow.
This is where the open source intel perfectly intersects with evolving U.S. policy.
The Shield of the Americas.
Yes. The dossier details a proposed framework called the Shield of the Americas. It is a military and economic coalition heavily pushed by Donald Trump, aimed at securing the Western Hemisphere.
Combating transnational cartels and locking down energy independence.
But notably, this proposed coalition explicitly excludes certain nations, namely Mexico, Brazil, and Colombia, due to various political and security concerns.
This signals a highly assertive, deeply interventionist pivot in Latin America. It represents a strategy of securing ironclad alliances and physical resources much closer to home as the Middle East destabilizes.
This geopolitical maneuvering acts as a massive funnel, pushing global capital away from the Gulf and toward politically stable, allied Latin American energy plays.
The dossier specifically flags companies like Geopark, ticker GPRK, as a primary structural beneficiary of this capital rotation.
As global investors seek safe, non-OPEC jurisdictions for energy assets, these secured zones in the Americas become incredibly premium environments.
It's the perfect storm of push and pull factors. Instability and kinetic risk in the East drive a fortress mentality in the West.
And the global capital flows follow the path of least resistance and highest security.
Which brings us perfectly to another area where perception and reality are wildly disconnected. We've talked about capital flying to safety in the physical world.
But what is happening in the digital world? Let's look at the current state of artificial intelligence.
Yes, the AI disconnect.
The gap between the mainstream retail hype and the actual boots-on-the-ground insider reality right now is absolutely staggering.
It really is two different worlds.
Let's start with how the average retail investor and consumer is currently interacting with AI. Millions of people are currently turning to public AI chatbots. Tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude.
And using them for incredibly high-stakes decisions, like pension planning, tax optimization, and direct financial advice.
And the intelligence community views this as incredibly dangerous.
The fundamental architecture of these public models makes them prone to what the industry calls hallucinations. But that term is almost too polite.
It makes it sound like a fun dream.
Right. You have to understand how a large language model works. It generates responses by predicting the most statistically likely next word in a sequence based on vast amounts of internet training data.
It is essentially a hyper-advanced autocomplete.
Yes. It does not perform actual deterministic mathematical calculations, nor does it possess a deep structural understanding of nuanced, evolving legal framework.
Exactly. I want to use an analogy here to make this clear. Imagine standard algorithmic software as a calculator. You punch in 2 plus 2 and it will always equal 4.
It's deterministic.
But these public LLMs are more like a remarkably articulate improv actor. If you ask the improv actor for tax advice, they will confidently deliver a monologue that sounds incredibly professional and uses all the right jargon.
But they are making it up on the spot.
The dossier highlights terrifying cases where people are asking these public bots for advice on complex, jurisdiction-specific tax laws regarding pension liquidations.
And what happens?
The bots are confidently inventing tax loopholes that simply do not exist in the real world. They sound authoritative, but the math is fundamentally wrong, and the legal advice is pure fiction.
The problem is that the mass market is vastly underserved. Traditional human financial advisors are expensive and often require high minimum balances.
This creates a massive advice gap that these free, structurally flawed public AI tools are rushing to fill.
But the dossier points out that the true alpha, the real sustainable winner in the AI wealth management space, will not be a public, generalized chatbot.
What will it be?
It will be proprietary, structurally sound, deterministic AI designed specifically for financial architecture.
The intel points directly to BlackRock's Aladdin platform as the prime example.
Yes.
BlackRock is positioned to build or acquire specialized AI architectures, like the Brain RNNs specifically mentioned in the academic research within the dossier.
These are models built to actually understand mathematical constraints and regulatory rule sets.
They can capture the automated advice market and scale it globally without making those catastrophic, liability-inducing hallucination errors that the public models make.
But while retail investors are blindly trusting chatbots and throwing their life savings at literally any stock with the letters AI in its press release, the C-suite, the actual insiders, they're doing the exact opposite.
This is perhaps the most glaring disconnect in the entire intelligence dossier. The mainstream financial news is running breathless headlines every day about the AI boom creating boundless historic wealth.
They highlight things like Google CEO Sundar Pichai's potential $692 million pay package.
That kind of headline feeds the retail frenzy. It makes the average investor feel like they are missing out on the gold rush of a lifetime.
But the triangulated reality derived from tracking insider trading flows tells a totally different, much darker story. The smart money is quietly, systematically heading for the exits.
The dossier flags significant, clustered insider selling across a massive swath of high beta tech and crypto-adjacent names.
Just to clarify for you, the listener, when we say high beta tech, we are talking about those highly volatile stocks that swing wildly with market sentiment. The momentum plays.
Precisely. Executives, founders, and board directors at companies like Coinbase, Snowflake, Palantir, Shopify, and Salesforce are actively cashing out hundreds of millions of dollars in stock.
But wait, let me ask the obvious question. If AI is truly the fourth industrial revolution, and these companies are at the forefront, why would the founders sell? Why not hold for another decade of exponential growth?
Because insiders know the difference between a technological revolution and a valuation bubble.
They recognize that the current stock prices have priced in 10 years of flawless execution and infinite margin expansion.
They are utilizing the massive liquidity provided by retail investors, who are buying the hype, to distribute their shares and de-risk their personal portfolios.
It is a classic distribution phase. Retail buys the narrative, insiders sell the reality.
The dossier even uses prediction markets to perfectly illustrate this psychological disconnect.
Look at Polymarket, a massive crypto-based prediction platform.
Retail bettors on that platform give only a 16% chance that MicroStrategy, a company that has essentially become a leveraged Bitcoin proxy,
That they will sell any of its Bitcoin treasury before 2027.
Retail completely believes in the HODL narrative, the idea that the diamond hands will never sell.
But meanwhile, corporate insiders across the sector are quietly de-risking every chance they get.
And speaking of prediction markets, the demographic makeup of these platforms is an intelligence signal all its own.
Yes, the dossier takes a deep look at platforms like Kalshi, which allow users to bet on real-world events.
Kalshi is currently spending a fortune trying desperately to diversify their user base, because right now the platform is overwhelmingly dominated by a young male demographic that heavily overlaps with the sports betting crowd.
In fact, the data shows that 65% of the trading volume on these event prediction platforms is just sports bets. People betting on the NFL or the NBA, not macroeconomic trends.
This is a fundamental existential flaw for a platform built entirely on the premise of the wisdom of the crowd.
Let's dive into that concept for a second because it's vital.
The wisdom of the crowd theory dates back to a statistician named Francis Galton at a country fair in 1906. He asked 800 people to guess the weight of an ox.
Some guesses were way too high, some way too low.
But when he averaged all 800 guesses together, the crowd's average was exactly, to the pound, the true weight of the ox. The crowd was smarter than the individual experts.
But there's a catch, right?
A massive catch. Galton's crowd was cognitively diverse. It included butchers, farmers, and completely random fairgoers.
For a market to be efficient and predictive, it requires diverse inputs. If your crowd is overwhelmingly homogenous, if it consists entirely of 25-year-old finance bros, your predictions will be completely skewed by their specific echo chamber.
You cannot have the true wisdom of the crowd if half the population is missing from the data set.
Exactly. So Kalshi is actively paying massive lifestyle influencers, like Gigi Alcaraz, and creating completely frivolous pop culture bets.
Like whether Taylor Swift will say the word ring during a televised concert, just to attract women to the platform.
It looks like a cheap marketing stunt, but it is actually a desperate attempt at data integrity.
They realize that for their economic model to actually predict geopolitical or macroeconomic events accurately, they need the cognitive diversity of the entire population.
Let's transition from the algorithms of AI and the statistics of prediction markets to the messy, fundamentally human world of corporate culture.
This is where we look at how companies actually connect with the people they're trying to sell to. The search for authenticity is defining corporate success right now, and the contrast highlighted in the dossier is wild.
Let's look at Disney, specifically Pixar.
Pixar is a studio that historically defined creative innovation for an entire generation. They built worlds we had never seen before.
But the intelligence indicates they are currently facing a severe internal crisis of creative bankruptcy.
Pete Docter, the legendary chief creative officer at Pixar, actually admitted this publicly in a surprisingly candid moment.
Under his leadership over the last few years, Pixar focused heavily on niche, autobiographical films.
The mandate was for directors to make movies about their highly specific, personal childhood experiences. This resulted in films like Luca, Turning Red, and the initial scrapped drafts of a movie called Elio.
Now, to be fair, these films were often critically appreciated. But from a market perspective, they largely failed to connect with the massive, universal global audiences that built the Disney empire.
They lacked the broad mythic resonance of universal concepts, like talking toys or monsters living in your closet or fish lost in the ocean.
So Disney's corporate leadership, specifically Bob Iger, has stepped in with a heavy-handed top-down mandate.
They are aggressively pivoting Pixar away from artistic exploration and indie-style storytelling and turning it into a rigid franchise factory.
The new internal rule is, for every one original film they produce, they must make 2 completely safe sequels.
We are going to see Toy Story 5, Incredibles 3, Inside Out 3, and on and on.
If we look at the financial implications of this shift, it's quite stark. Disney is no longer planting new franchises. It is entirely focused on strip mining old ones.
The Intel notes they haven't launched a truly successful, new, enduring franchise with deep merchandising legs since 2020.
This mandate fundamentally alters Pixar's valuation model. It turns a high-growth creative engine into a low-growth, high-margin utility model.
But wait, let me push back. Doesn't that make sense from a Wall Street perspective? Inside Out 2 just made well over $1 billion. Sequels are guaranteed money. Why is the Dossier framing this as a negative?
Because it prioritizes short-term predictability over long-term brand equity. Yes, Toy Story 5 will make money, but the 6th, 7th, and 8th iterations will eventually face diminishing returns as audience fatigue sets in.
By abandoning the risk required to create the next Toy Story, Disney is slowly starving its future pipeline.
It is a massive red flag for Disney's terminal value. And the Dossier views this creative decline as a strong validation for a long-term short thesis on Disney stock, ticker symbol DIS. They're squeezing the sponge dry instead of finding a new well of water.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, I want to contrast that highly manufactured, risk-averse, sterile corporate mandate with what is happening over at Burger King.
It is the complete and total opposite end of the authenticity spectrum.
The president of Burger King US, a guy named Tom Curtis, recently went incredibly viral online. And he didn't do it with a multi-million-dollar CGI ad campaign or celebrity endorsements.
He did it with a raw 13-second video recorded on a cell phone on his back porch.
The context for this video is key to understanding why it resonated so deeply. Shortly before this, the CEO of McDonald's had posted a highly produced corporate video where he took a tiny, perfectly staged, almost sterile nibble of a new burger.
It felt entirely focus group, deeply corporate, and completely disconnected from how human beings actually eat fast food.
So Tom Curtis, at Burger King, strikes back. He films himself taking an absolutely massive, messy chomp out of a Whopper.
He gets sauce all over his face. He's chewing with his mouth open. He's grinning, and he just wipes his mouth with the back of his hand.
It brilliantly, wordlessly lampooned the artificiality of his biggest rival. It was funny. But he went even further than just a viral meme. He actually posted his personal cell phone number online for anyone to call.
And this is where it stops being PR and starts being operational strategy. He didn't just post it as a stunt to get picked up by the blogs. He physically sat there and answered 1,400 customer calls and text messages directly.
He took copious notes on complaints from everyday customers about soggy chicken nuggets and smushed buns.
This raises an important question. How does this kind of raw, unfiltered, slightly chaotic authenticity actually translate into driving corporate operations? Because Wall Street usually hates unpredictability.
That is exactly why the market often misprices these events. Analysts dismiss them as mere social media memes.
But the intelligence in the Dossier views this level of authenticity as a crucial leading indicator of a successful multi-year turnaround strategy for Restaurant Brands International, ticker QSR, which owns Burger King.
Think about the operational feedback loop. When the president of the company is personally taking 1,400 calls to hear that the nuggets in Ohio are soggy, the latency of information is zero.
They are actively bypassing the highly paid consultants, the sterile focus groups, and the middle management filters to get ground truth data.
They are using that raw data to simplify their menus and fix their store-level execution. That gritty human connection builds brand relevance that the sterile top-down mandates, like we just saw at Disney, simply cannot buy.
It's so true. In a media landscape saturated with perfection, consumers can smell corporate fear and focus grouping from a mile away.
And conversely, they can smell genuine confidence. Tom Curtis eating that messy Whopper was pure, unadulterated confidence.
It was.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground. We've talked about malls, car dealerships, the Strait of Hormuz, AI hallucinations, and fast food marketing. Now, let's push out to the absolute bleeding edge for our final segment.
Frontier science and hidden supply chains.
This is where the dossier gets incredibly deep and, frankly, a little mind-bending.
And this is where the longest-term structural shifts in the global economy are hiding. We're looking at massive disruptions in the most fundamental layers of life itself, our food systems, our genetic code, and the neurology of the human brain.
Let's start with a really quirky story from the United Kingdom that actually has massive, terrifying global implications. Waitrose, which is a high-end British grocery chain, recently announced they were halting the sale of all mackerel in their stores.
Which, on the surface, seems completely paradoxical. Because if you go to the coast of the UK, mackerel appear to be incredibly abundant. It's the fish anyone can catch off a pier.
Exactly. The dossier literally calls this the mackerel paradox. Waitrose suspended sales, citing deep sustainability concerns. But why does a posh supermarket playing one specific type of fish matter to global commodity markets?
Because it is the first mainstream visible domino to fall in a much broader, terrifying global protein crisis. The reality that the intelligence community is tracking is that industrial harvesting capacity in the world's oceans has terminally outstripped the natural biological replenishment rates of these key fish stocks.
And it's not just about what humans are ordering at seafood restaurants. This is where the hidden supply chain comes in.
Precisely. Wild fish stocks, particularly oily fish like mackerel and anchovies, are a critical source for fish meal.
Fish meal is the foundational high-protein ingredient used globally in animal feed for poultry, pork, and farmed salmon, as well as in traditional agriculture.
If the oceans are depleted and the fish meal supply collapses, the entire global agricultural supply chain loses its baseline protein input. This creates a massive long-term structural crisis that demands a solution.
And the solution is chemical. The accelerating depletion of fish stocks creates explosive future demand for synthetic fertilizers, specifically nitrogen and phosphate, to increase crop yields to replace that lost protein.
The dossier connects the dots beautifully. It points out that today's quirky headline about a mackerel shortage at Waitrose is tomorrow's massive earnings driver for synthetic fertilizer giants like CF Industries, ticker symbol CF.
It's an incredible chain of unseen events. A fish shortage in the Atlantic directly leads to a boom in industrial chemical plants in the Midwest.
It really is.
Let's move from the depths of the oceans to the very code of human life. The dossier highlights a major breakthrough in oncology regarding something called line 1.
Yes, line 1 retrotransposons.
Yeah.
It sounds incredibly dense, but in layman's terms, geneticists often refer to these as jumping genes.
They are sequences of DNA that have the ability to literally copy and paste themselves into different random parts of the human genome.
To make this accessible, imagine standard genetic testing as a basic spell checker on your computer. It's looking for a single typo in a massive document, like spelling the word "the" as T-E-H.
But line 1 insertions aren't tiny typos. They are entire rogue paragraphs that have been copied and pasted right into the middle of a vital instruction manual.
The spell checker says all the individual words are spelled right, but the manual itself is completely corrupted and unreadable.
That is a perfect analogy, and the academic research highlighted in the dossier identified that these large line 1 insertions, these rogue paragraphs, are a recurrent structural cause of something called MET exon 14 skipping in cancer.
In essence, this specific mutation causes sustained oncogenic signaling. It essentially unplugs the brakes and tells the cancer cells to just keep growing and dividing without end.
So why does this highly specific biological mechanism matter to the intelligence and investment community?
Because it is a matter of diagnostic infrastructure. Standard, older genetic tests, the spell checkers, often completely miss these large, clunky insertions.
So if a patient has this specific cancer driver, but the standard test misses the rogue paragraph, they are given a false negative.
They are told they don't have the mutation, and consequently, they are denied the targeted life-saving therapies that were designed specifically to stop that cancer.
Which is a tragic failure of the system.
Exactly. And fixing that failure necessitates a total global update of clinical diagnostic panels. The entire healthcare system must shift away from older testing methods and upgrade to advanced next-generation sequencing, or NGS.
Which can read the whole manual and catch these massive structural variants.
This translates a niche paper in a medical journal directly into massive structural demand for the core platform technology provided by sequencing giants like Illumina, ticker symbol ILMNN.
The advancing science forces the physical infrastructure of healthcare to upgrade.
From the genetics of cancer, the dossier takes us into the mechanics of the brain and the body. There are two fascinating biological studies here that point directly to the future of human-machine interfaces and medical technology.
First, a study on C. elegans.
C. elegans are microscopic nematodes, or worms. They are extensively used in biological research because they have exactly 302 neurons, and scientists have mapped every single one of them perfectly.
Right. And researchers recently discovered something amazing about how they move. They found that these worms use gentle touch receptor neurons in their skin, not just to feel the outside world, like bumping into an obstacle, but to actually sense the microscopic friction, the surface traction beneath them.
They use this friction data to coordinate their own bodily movement. Their sense of proprioception, their brain, knowing where their body is in physical space, is functionally directly coupled to the physical friction they feel on their skin.
And the second study looks at the vastly more complex human brain. It involves a new technique called symptom-based lesion network mapping, or SLNM.
For decades, neuroscience kind of operated like phrenology. We thought specific symptoms mapped to hyperlocal, isolated spots in the brain.
But this new research shows that neurological symptoms don't work like that. Instead, they align with a fundamental principal gradient that spans the entire interconnected network of the brain.
So how does the intelligence synthesis in this dossier connect these abstract biological findings to future technology and investments?
It's all about how we interact with the physical world. The worm study suggests a massive breakthrough in geriatric care. As humans age, our risk of devastating falls increases dramatically.
This study suggests that fall risk might not just be about muscle weakness. It might be tied to a neurological degradation in how our skin perceives surface traction.
This insight could lead to a whole new industry of diagnostic tools for the elderly, and more importantly, therapeutic haptic wearables.
Imagine specialized shoes or clothing that provide amplified artificial friction feedback directly to the nervous system to prevent falls before they happen.
And the human brain mapping study suggests a complete paradigm shift in how we treat psychiatric and neurological conditions.
Instead of trying to zap one tiny broken circuit in the brain with a localized electrode or a highly targeted drug, therapies will move toward renormalizing the brain's entire fundamental network gradient.
It's a holistic, systems-level approach to neuromodulation.
To use another analogy, it is the difference between trying to fix a single pothole on a massive interstate versus actively managing the traffic flow of the entire highway system to prevent jams.
The companies that build the hardware, the brain-computer interfaces, and the AI models necessary to understand and modulate these global brain networks are sitting on an absolute goldmine of future medical technology.
It's incredible.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today, diving deep into this triangulated reality dossier. So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's take a step back and look at the broader thematic journey we've just taken.
It's a big picture.
We started by looking at Gen Z, a generation raised on screens, actively rejecting the digital-only world to physically hang out, touch fabrics, and socialize in shopping malls.
We saw everyday consumers willingly accepting 9-day shipping delays just to save a few dollars, completely upending the subsidized instant gratification logistics networks we've relied on for a decade.
We watched legacy car dealers go to legal war to protect the localized, physical, human-to-human transaction of buying a vehicle against the sterile efficiency of direct-to-consumer apps.
We tracked global capital, fleeing the kinetic physical risks of the Middle East to find safe harbor in the Americas.
We saw corporate insiders dumping AI stock while retail investors blindly trust hallucinating chatbots.
We saw the raw, gritty authenticity of a fast food CEO eating a messy burger absolutely trounce a highly polished multi-million-dollar corporate mandate from Disney.
And finally, we explored how the physical friction beneath a microscopic worm skin dictates how it navigates the real world.
When you synthesize all of these discrete, seemingly unrelated data points across industries and sciences, a profound, undeniable macro theme emerges.
We are witnessing a massive structural pushback against the frictionless, digital-only, instant gratification era that has defined the last 15 years of global economic growth.
The pendulum is swinging back, and it is swinging with violent force. The promise of a digital utopia, a world of zero-latency transactions and perfectly curated, algorithmically driven lives. It has left people starved for tangible reality, for actual cost efficiency, and for genuine, messy human connection.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today. We are accelerating rapidly toward a future that we are told is going to be dominated by instant AI answers, flawless synthetic media, and totally frictionless virtual realities. But what if the intelligence in this dossier is pointing to a massive generational inversion of value?
A total flip.
Exactly. In a world where digital perfection, instant gratification, and synthetic experiences become infinite and cheap, what if the most valuable premium asset in the world becomes friction? Think about it. The physical touch and the spontaneous social friction of walking through a physical store with your friends. The deliberate, patient waiting period for a package to arrive, signaling true intent rather than mindless consumption.
The messy, unfiltered human flaw in a viral video that tells you a real person is on the other side.
The localized handshake at a dealership, and the literal physical traction beneath our feet that tells our nervous system we are grounded in the real world. As everything else becomes synthetic and perfectly frictionless, reality, with all of its delays, its inefficiencies, its messes, and its friction, might just become the ultimate luxury good.
That is a very powerful thought.
Keep questioning the narrative, keep looking for the hidden signals, and we will see you on the next deep dive.